Hi everybody, Mary Scott Huff here with instructions step by step for completing the corded edge on the butterfly scarf. As you can see, the butterfly scarf is a stranded colorwork piece which has an interesting applied knitted cord edge. The corners have an extension of the knitted cord, which as you can see meets at the corner and can be tied or knotted or left to dangle free. Let me show you how we create this edge. The first step is to make an 8-inch length of knitted cord. With 2 double-pointed needles and my contrast color, I'm going to make a slip knot and cast on 5 stitches. This will be a 5-stitch knitted cord. I'm using the 2-ended long tail cast on here. I'm using the long tail cast on, which I like for this because it ends up with my working yarn here at this side of the knitting. So I've got my 5 stitches cast on. If you wanted to use another cast on, one which leaves the working tail over here, that's perfectly fine. Just remember to switch ends on your needle so the working tail lands on the left end of the needle. Okay, now we just scoot all 5 stitches over, making sure we have the working tail and not the cast on tail. We're going to knit 5 stitches. Take a little tug on that cast on tail and we're going to slide everything to the end of the double pointed needle again. Doesn't look like much yet, but give it a few rows here, which are actually rounds if you want to be super specific. They just don't look like it until it becomes a cord. There's 5, tug a little bit, slide to the end, and continue. Knit, 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 tug, slide to the end. Most of the time you'll see this technique demonstrated with really big needles and really big yarn for visual ease, which is fine. But I think for this project it's nicer to show the actual yarn in use. This is 2-ply Kaoni Color Effect yarn provided in the Butterflies kit or for sale where all fine yarns are sold. Now you can see I'm starting to get a little tail of yarn here. Now you can see that I've done about 1.5 inches of knitted cord, and I've tucked the cast on tail up into the inside of the knitted cord to get rid of it. Just used a crochet hook to zip it right up into the cord like it never happened, because we want it to look sexy for the movie, right? Now, at this point in the demonstration, I'm going to ask you to suspend disbelief and pretend that this little piece of knitted cord represents the 8 inches of knitted cord I've asked you to create for your butterfly shawl before casting off the top edge. Okay, so this is 8 inches, honest. At the end of knitting the butterfly shawl, you'll have a big hoop of stranded colorwork knitting with the top row knit in contrast color. Just the last row will be in the same color as your knitted cord edge. So again, suspend disbelief for me. Pretend this is stranded colorwork and this is the last row of your knitted piece, or round, excuse me. So the way to go from knitted cord to applied knitted cord is this. Here's our stranded colorwork example. live stitches at the top. Here's our freestanding, if you will, knitted cord. I'm going to slip all 5 stitches of the knitted cord onto my big main needle that I've been doing strand color work on. I'm parking it, the little knitted cord tail, right next door to the beginning of my last knitted round. Okay? Cord, scarf. And here's how we do the applied knitted cord. We go knit the first 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches of the cord. Stitch 5 is still here, adjacent to my knitting. Rather than work it like we have been, I'm going to slip, slip, knit. You may recognize this maneuver as a left-leaning decrease, because it is. And now I've attached the very first live stitch and bound it off to my cord. Let's see that again. Slip everybody back onto the big circular needle. Then knit 4 out of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, stitch 5, I'm going to SSK, slip, slip, and then knit 2 together through the back loops. SSK it with the next live stitch of my scarf top. And move all 5 stitches back to the main needle. Can you see it's beginning to both attach and bind off those live stitches? And now you're probably beginning to see why I had to change color for this last row, because that SSK, as you attach the cord stitch by stitch, does tend to peek through when we have strongly contrasting colors. So it's just a way of making the cord look really beautiful with no show through of the contrast. So here we go again. Guess what? You get to practice this 82 stitches. You're going to be great at applied knitted cord. And an SSK at the end. Put everybody back. And we're ready for the next one. I've now got 3 live stitches, both bound off and attached to my applied cord. Now you can see as I'm moving along, it's really beginning to look like a bound off edge with this little extension tail, which will later be tied. If you haven't before, take this opportunity with all these millions of SSKs you have to do to look into the different ways there are of making a left-leaning decrease. SSK can be maneuvered several different ways. For instance, it's usually taught this way: slip knitwise, insert the left needle into both of those 2 stitches, and then knit both 2 stitches together through the back loop. That's the traditional SSK maneuver. But you can also do it slipping everybody back here, and I'm going to knit up to that SSK again. You can also take this stitch 5 of the cord and reverse its presentation on the left needle. See, all I did was flick it around real quick. Then knit it with its neighbor together through the back loops. You're actually eliminating a whole slip. It's much faster. I'll show you again. Knit, 2, 3, 4, and this time, as if to knit, I pop it off the end, park it back, and grab it and its next door neighbor through the back loops, come around and through. I find that to be a much faster way of executing the SSK, and it stretches out the left-leaning decrease much less in my hands. Take a look around on YouTube or ask at Knit Night, what's your favorite SSK, and see if you can't isolate your very favorite one. Here's another version of the SSK maneuver to practice as you have your 500 million SSKs to create. I'm going to knit the first 4 just as I have been. This time, this SK works like this. Here's the last stitch of the cord, so I'm going to go in knitwise just as I always do. Rather than move it off the needle or do anything else though, I'm going to rotate the knitting around and grab or get my right needle through the back of the next adjoining live stitch. I'm creating a twist here in this front one and going straight through the second stitch. Then I wrap my yarn as I normally would, come back up through both and off. That one's a little bit fiddly at first, but you may find it's the quickest SSK of all because there's actually no slipping involved. Want to see it again? I'm going to knit 4 out of 5. And now, through as if to knit, but we're not moving it off the needle at all. Instead, rotate back around, dig around for the back leg of the next adjoining stitch, and you've got it. Wrap your yarn or pick it as you do. Whoops, like I said, fiddly. And I'm sorry to be demonstrating this with such dark yarn. It's not ideal. Wrap around, and there it goes, through and off. So an SSK with no S's. Pretty sneaky, right? And move everybody back. So here we are almost at the end of my swatch, and you can see I've bound off and applied cord to every single one of my live stitches that were left at the end of the main knitting. So let's just button up this last one. Knit, 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 and the very last SSK. Ta-da! We are now officially at the end of the bind off of the scarf. Wasn't that easy? The fastest 580 however stitches you ever saw. I bet you're fantastic at SSK now. So here we are at the end of our circular piece of knitting. What's going to happen next? If you check your directions, you'll see we're going to actually go back to knitting regular old knitted cord, not applied anymore. And we do it by, just as when we began, knitting 5 out of 5 stitches and never turning the work. So just as we did at the beginning, we're going to continue making some more knitted cord. We're back to 2 DPNs, and at the end of every 5 stitches we slide the whole thing to the end of the needle. Knit 5, slide to the end of the needle. So here we are at the end of the bound top edge of the butterfly scarf, and yeah, that's another 8 inches. I promise. This tab right here, 8 inches of cord, you betcha. Now, at this point in the instructions for your scarf, you'll see break yarn, thread through a tapestry needle, and run through the remaining 5 stitches to close the cord. Here's a cheater way if you are too lazy, like I often am, to go find a tapestry needle. Break the yarn, take the next stitch and knit it, but instead of slipping off, I want you to pull it all the way through and then slip it off. Do the same thing 4 more times. Knit, pull it all the way through, then slip it off. It's the cheater way for people who can't find their tapestry needle. Not that that's ever happened to you. 2 more. Ready? Knit all the way through, slip it off. Last one. Knit all the way through, slip it off. Now we have this fun little thing. If you just give it a nice firm tug, ta-da! End of the cord is closed perfectly. And if you still haven't found that tapestry needle, don't despair. Use your crochet hook to gently hide the tail end inside the cord. Ta-da! Today's sexy party trick. And now you're asking, great, I understand how to bind off the top of this hoop of knitting using the live stitches that were left at the end. But if I'm going to create the same corded edge down at the bottom, my cast on edge, how am I supposed to get live loops to attach to? Here's how. Good old-fashioned pick up and knit. Again, suspend disbelief and imagine for a moment that this is the cast on edge of your great big hoop of circular stranded colorwork knitting. We're going to pick up and knit through the cast on loops. Just like this. Needle goes down through the knitting, loop of working yarn on the wrong side, and we just pick up a new stitch. We're going to do it for every column of knitting, so we're going to pick up and knit 380, forgive me, I keep quoting the number that I don't know, 380 some stitches. Pick up and knit. Some people like to do this with a crochet hook. That's just fine if you need it to get started. I find that it's a little fiddly. For me, you really don't need it if you have a sharp enough needle in this hand. But your mileage may vary. Do it how you like to. Pick up and knit. At the end of that maneuver, you should have one live stitch of contrast yarn corresponding to each vertical column of your stranded colorwork, ready to do the very same applied knitted cord that you did on the top. We'll do the same maneuver again at the short ends of the scarf, but we'll be together in class for that part, so don't despair, but you probably have figured out exactly how that'll work, or if not, you will by the end of this. One last thing. This pick up and knit row that you've done through the cast on is its own separate piece of string. I want you to have both ends of it free, broken, before you begin your knitted cord. You'll eventually just weave them in, but don't get confused and try to use this working yarn for anything other than new stitches with which to apply your knitted cord on that edge. Thanks so much for your attention. If you have questions, never fear to drop me a line, Mary@maryscotthuff.com. I'll see you in class.